Hey there, Simone here with Bulletproof Business Growth, as always with some ideas and insights, what to pay attention to when you are getting ready to really scale your business. So last week we talked about kind of the basic stuff, the sort of more vanilla stuff that you've probably all heard about. You probably all think that it's a great idea, but the question is, are you practicing it? Because I gave you a good rundown of the most important things to pay attention to, and even one of those things missing could trip you up and really slow you down. And without those kind of fundamental things in place, even if you're just missing one, you're not going to be able to really push the gas, put more gasoline on the fire, get to a place where you can truly look at scaling and increasing your momentum. So make sure, if you didn't listen last week, if you haven't run down that list, if you haven't kind of reignited things that you're already doing and maybe you forgot about something, make sure you do this first, because without that in place, we can't really move forward. So today, so that, like I said, that was kind of the more vanilla stuff. So today we're going to look at how we make this a little more spicy. How do we get a little bit more performance, engagement, inspiration out of your team and yourself so that you can truly look at scaling to that next level of business. So what the premise behind everything is, and I'm going to remind you of this over and over and over, is to have leaders at every level of your company. So if you have a bigger companies and you have an executive level, great, you know that you need leaders there. But then even when you go through all the different layers of organizations, you still need to have leaders at every single level, no matter if they're those executives or if they're your most junior, your most bottom level people who are maybe they're completely new, or this is their first job, or they've never thought like this before. But every single person on your team needs to be in alignment with this thinking. So when we look at this, when we perform like that, it is a game changer to everything you are doing. Because now this means this is not all dependent on you. You are actually have a team around you that can manage up. And managing up means taking everything off your plate that's a distraction to you, that keeps you from delivering at the highest level to your company, so you can truly do that. That is what your team is about. That's what you have them for. That's why you're paying them. So this is maybe a reminder you need to have yourself, and it's also something that you have to train them to understand, that this is why they're there. That's their purpose. So once we have leaders at every level, it is a complete game changer for you, because that means you no longer need to work in the business. You can actually step out, truly step into your CEO seat and do the stuff that's actually important, which is paying attention to your relationship, to your networking, to everything that only you can do. So this is the 5% that only you can do, that you need to focus on so that we can actually make a difference. All right, with all that being said, how do we do that? So make sure you take care of all the fundamental stuff, and then we're starting to expand that. Because now that means we have to really look at what are the next level goals that we can start emphasizing so that we get those higher level results. So that means we have to really look at the goals that we already have and make them truly audacious. You've heard of the BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious goals. It's very, very important that when we set goals, that we don't just make them achievable because it's less scary, it's more comfortable, it's in alignment with everybody's complacent mindset. So now we have to kind of wake everybody up, give them a little bit of kick in the booty, and go, all right, time to wake up, time to start delivering at a higher level. So set your goals truly audaciously so that they become stretch goals. That means they have to feel like they are almost impossible to reach. So think about the realistic magic wand. That's what we want to do. What's the realistic magic wand? So it's not completely out there, because then nobody's going to believe you, and it can actually be disempowering and uninspiring. But we want to hit that balance just right, where we set those goals, that they're truly stretch goals, that they seem almost impossible, that they create a big sense of urgency. And, you know, think of the, you know, Apple mantra, think different. That's where we have to get. If we don't start thinking differently, that means we're staying in the status quo, we're complacent, and nothing is changing. So we have to force people, and yourself sometimes too, to up that game. And because only when you think differently are you able to innovate and start taking risks, because that means you're going to achieve bigger goals. So innovation and taking risks is super important. So we have to kind of force people to go there, because it's much easier not to. And sometimes when I'm saying forcing, I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's just like waking people up and letting them know, having them understand that you're going for something bigger than you have been. Okay, so get those BHAGs on your scoreboard. Next thing is, well, now we need to question the status quo. So that means questioning what I call sacred cows. And those are when you challenge long time assumptions, processes, or traditions. So something that you've always been doing, something that may have been why you started the company. It may have been your first round of success, but things change, evolve, times have been really, really different. So you have to evolve with the markets, with the audiences, with the demands. So now we have to look at what we're doing. Are we still really supporting and growing a product, a service that is set up to succeed? And I always think of that from 3 different perspectives, and you have to hit all 3 of them. For one thing, we have to know, are we truly the best in the world of doing this? Are we truly the best in the world doing this? So we have to say yes to that. So we have to be really, really good at it. We have to also love doing it. So the skill and the passion have to go together. Then we have to look at, do we have a market that we can keep expanding so that when we scale, we have enough market share that we can go for? And then a really, really important piece is it the most profitable thing that we can be doing? So those 4 have to be in alignment to truly get to a place where we can question all those sacred cows, eliminate what's no longer serving us, because that's the question. A lot of times you start with something, it's kind of like an old pair of shoes that's really comfortable, but when you think about it, it's really not that comfortable. There's really holes in those shoes. Every time you wear them, you get wet feet and blisters. And a lot of times that's what our business starts to look like. So we have to ask those questions. We have to question assumptions, processes, and traditions, so that we can eliminate obvious truths because they're not that obvious. And then we can reconsider what truly serves us and limit our product or services to that exact thing that'll put us on the map. So it's got to be all those 4 things that I mentioned. So that's the second thing. The third thing is we have to get intolerant to good enough. And this might be confusing, because you've heard me probably say a bunch of times that we have to actually eliminate perfection, because that 20% that goes between, 80% good enough and perfect, maybe only you are going to notice. And it is a ton of extra time and resources that go into that extra 20%. So you've heard me say this a lot of times probably. But at the same time, we have to get to a balance where good enough is not good enough. We have to truly stand out. We have to deliver at a level of excellence. So finding that balance where good enough and excellence are not counterintuitive, where they're not counterproductive, is really important. So you have to keep looking at, how do we do what we do? Are we putting in more effort than is worth it? Or are we at that right balance point where we are truly hitting excellence, extraordinary, and at the same time we're really efficient and effective in the way that we're doing this? So there's no waste of resources, whether it's time, money, people, hours, any of that stuff. So we have to always be questioning the status quo, because when we only get compliance, we don't get better results. So status quo and compliance is not good enough. We have to keep questioning that status quo, and we have to get obsessed with delivering excellence to be able to support evolution. And as business owners, we have to constantly reimagine, reevaluate, redefine, and make it better and better and better, and deliver at a higher level, because the second you hit stagnation, even if you're actually theoretically staying at the same level, your value starts declining. You always have to deliver more to even maintain value, but truly to grow, you have to deliver a lot more. So we have to become intolerant of good enough. The next thing that we have to pay attention to is we have to breed healthy discontent. And it has to become part of your culture, because again, that's where complacency comes in. When people are content, it's a place where they stop innovating, where they stop disrupting, where they stop looking for new solutions. So we need to get to this place where we have a culture of healthy discontent, which means we always question how it's done. We always look for better ways of doing this. And because content in that context breeds creativity and innovation, and that means we have higher impact. So we need more creativity. We need that constantly seeking innovation so we can create higher impact in our business, whether that's just the impact that what we do has on our clients, or the impact that the increase of the bottom line has for our business, for our possibilities. But we always have to look at making sure that everybody on your team understands there's no coasting. You know, we can take a breather after a big achievement, but there's no coasting. We always have to look for what's the next most important thing, what's the next priority that will keep putting us on the map. So that was the fourth thing. Then we have to look at a different mindset. We have to start requiring all of our team member to be disruptive. So part of their growth discussions, when you have your one-on-ones with your team, is you want to ask them how they will disrupt every aspect or an aspect of the business or of the industry, so that there's more innovation, there is more new truth, there is another way of putting you on the map. Because when you think about what creates quantum leaps in performance, it's disruption. So it's when you look at the way something has always been done, you start questioning that, and you start coming up, or you come up with something that truly puts the old way of doing it to the wayside, because that's what we have to do. So that quantum leap in performance is really what helps us get greater market share and market gain, which is, when you're looking for scaling, that's one of the most important things to pay attention to and keep creating. So that was the fifth thing. The next thing is, when you ask your team to work at a higher level, to get out of their comfort zones, to try things they haven't before, to do all those things that are kind of against human intuition and human nature, because human nature most of the time is to stay pretty comfortable. But when you're asking them to show up at that higher level, to go the extra mile, that means you have to reward when they are experimenting. And that, for some of you, this might be a very scary idea, because that means, okay, they're going to do stuff they don't know how, they're going to do stuff that are not proven to succeed. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to fail. And there's no great growth without that. So we have to reward our team members to experiment. We have to give them incentives to try new models and new strategies that help us innovate, but also that means we're most probably going to fail in the process. We are failing our way to something truly new and truly disruptive. So as business owners, there's a piece of balance that comes in where you have to be willing to allow your team to do that and empower them to do that. And that has to be part of the culture and everyday conversation, because a lot of times, well, everybody comes in with baggage. Everybody comes in with what they've tried before, what failed, how they were treated, so that everybody has all these stories in their brains about what it means to try something and fail. Is that worth it? So when you reward experimentation, and that's part of the culture, that means they are going to become those innovators and disruptors who you want on your team, because that's how you can really make that quantum leap of growth. So we have to help people to accept failure as a necessary step in the evolution. And of course, we always try to minimize failure. We always try to train around it. We always try to make sure everybody gets the takeaways from something that didn't go well. But we need to have that element as part of the culture so that we can create radical improvement. So when we truly reward experimentation, that means we get more innovation, and that's where the radical improvement comes from. Another piece is you want to promote your competition. And that might sound kind of weird, but you want to highlight your competition as role models. You want to look at something that they do extremely well that you wish you were doing, or that you wish your team was showing up like that, and you use them as role models so that you can use your competition to create inspiration and learning, which helps you turbocharge your growth. So it's a very useful way to inspire the team and create that little bit of healthy competition by promoting the competition. So you want to think about, like, any companies that you truly admire, maybe not for the product or the service they're delivering, but is it for their culture? Like, look at companies that have what you don't, and then use that as the model for your team for something that you want to aspire to. Also, in that vein of waking people up, you have to demand epiphanies. So that is kind of the where you want to challenge your team to come up with one new insight, with one kind of aha moment, one kind of that insight that inspires them to make a big change. So we want one of those every quarter. So when you have your growth conversations, when you have your reviews, you want to make sure that you ask them, hey, what's a big aha moment that you've had about what you do? Your role, the customer, leadership in the company, doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be related to, hey, what they're doing, but a big one is around being, because especially when we ask our teams to pull out all the stops and truly do something different, it is going to create a lot of discomfort for them. So we want them to constantly evaluate that and notice when they're showing up differently and what that produces. So we want to make them aware of that. This is part of the requirement. This is part of their job. This is part of the culture. We want to demand epiphanies so that they get the learning from it, that they share it with the rest of the team so that everybody can benefit from that. So one new insight, one aha moment per quarter is not a lot to ask, because it helps them to transform their performance. Because like I said earlier, epiphanies really promote a mindset shift to achieve differently at a higher level as different people, as different leaders. So we want to demand epiphanies, and then we want to make sure that we create successors. So when you think about what does that mean, is part of your role as a CEO is to always look for new talent and those incredible A players that can help you up level the quality of your team. So sometimes that means hiring up. Sometimes that means we have to replace the people who are near and dear to us, who have been loyal, who helped us build the company, but they may have run out of capacity, skill set, and ability to help us grow. And a good way to inspire the people that you have is to have successors lined up where this pushes elevated performance, because they want to keep their role. They want to keep in their function. So when somebody else is vying for their job, it creates motivation. And it's not so much of a threat that you're dangling in front of them, but it's also, if they're the right people, they're going to look at this as a motivation to maybe have a mentor come in that can help them up level. And also that creates that good bit of healthy competition, so that they have to show up at a different level, because they know if they don't, somebody else will want their position. And lastly, but one of the most important things that you can do is always ask the what if questions. Never settle with the first answer. So when we think about, how does the human brain work? So as you ask a question, you get this flood of answers, you're brainstorming. And, when you think about how this works, is a lot of times you get all this stuff at once and you're writing it down, and then you think you have your answer. But if you truly ask again, if you start composing different scenarios, if you ask open-ended questions with those what-if scenarios, when you, again, challenge current assumptions, now you have the opportunity to open up another level. It's kind of like peeling an onion. There's like layer after layer after layer after layer. So you never want to settle with what's visible right in the beginning. You want to keep peeling back the layers and getting more deeper answers. So my advice for that is always like, ask the question, ask some open-ended questions around that to help you expand, and then just kind of notice what you all get. And when you think you're out of ideas, ask those what-if questions again, and you'll notice you'll get a whole other level of answers. Maybe you'll just get one or two, but they're truly impactful. And then let that rest, go away and do something else, and then ask that question again. And then you will come out with what's truly the best answer to your question. So ask those what-if questions. So I've just given you 10 ways of pulling out the stops for a team that's been around for a while, that you think has run out of ideas, that you think may have run out of skill set. But first, go back to what we discussed last week and kind of make sure that you hit all the fundamentals, all the vanilla stuff, and then spice it up with what we just talked about, which is truly taking all the fundamentals and ratcheting up another notch so that you get that next level of performance out of your team, but really also out of yourself, because it forces you to show up differently. It forces you to let go, to shift responsibilities, to become a mentor, a champion, a coach, rather than a doer in your business, which is where most of you are stuck. So, and then, there may be that moment when you recognize, despite doing all of this, your team is still failing. And that may be because they have truly run out of answers. They have hit their capacity. And then as a business owner, it's time to make those decisions and hire up. Now, your amazing, loyal team members, hopefully you can move them to a different seat, because their ego can handle it. There's still plenty of areas in your business where they can deliver a ton of value. So we always want to make sure that our good people, we move them in their seat when it's necessary. And as long as they're on board with that, that can be a great solution. But then we want to hire somebody over them that can come in with a new set of fresh new eyes, new set of skills, new set of ideas that can challenge the entire team to show up at a higher level. So hiring up is one of the most important things you can do to truly get to that next level of business much faster than if you had to train people, hope they'll figure it out, or keep pushing the same skill set and the same answers that you've been pushing for sometimes years. So make sure that you make a plan for your hiring, where you really, like, every quarter you want to look at your team, top grade your team, look at who are the weakest links, and either, if they're still a great company fit, move them somewhere else. And if they're not, move them off your bus, because right now they're just sucking your resources, your time, and your bandwidth. So it's very, very important. And honestly, I don't care about all the stories of how hard it is to hire. It's always been hard to hire. Maybe it's a little bit harder to hire right now, but it also means there are more discerning people who are ready to be a better fit for you. But we have to find them, and we have to make sure that they can hit the ground running, that you are ready for them. And that's, like, I can't even emphasize how important that piece is, because we can do all the stuff I've been talking about just now and last week. But if you're not ready for them, it's a huge, huge waste of your time, your money, your resources. So I hope all this is making sense and this is helping. Make sure that you listen to this several times and come up with a game plan around this. And we have a great new training out right now that explores all this in detail. So go to bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com/leap, or click on that link that's somewhere around this video and go check out the new training. Have a great week, and I will see you next.